This podcast is brought to you by The Current. Ever wanted to sit down to a candid conversation with the marketing leaders of the world's biggest brands? The Current podcast is your chance. On The Current podcast, you'll find exclusive interviews with the experts and trendsetters who are on the front lines of digital advertising, and they always leave the ad tech jargon at the door. Subscribe to The Current at www.thecurrent.com or anywhere you get your podcast today.
Hi everybody, I am Jeremy Bloom. I am here with Manny Puentes.
How's it going, Jeremy?
I'm great, Manny. How are you?
Fantastic. Glad to be here.
Awesome. I am here with the Advertising Forum, and we are partnering with the IAB Tech Lab at the International Summit. So to kick things off, Manny, as you can see right behind me, this is the end of the beginning. Nothing will be the same. Now that's a line from Churchill, but how does that relate to Genius Sports and what you're doing at Genius Sports? Why don't you tell us a little bit for those that don't know?
Yeah, for sure.
What's Genius Sports?
Well, look, Genius Sports is actually, it's been around for decades, 2 decades. They're a public company, about 2,500 people. They work with 400 leagues globally. It's an incredible company. And they basically, founded their roots in data collection. So think about play-by-play data, right? So if, things that are happening on the field. So in the case of the NFL, everything that happens on the field, Genius Sports knows about it, right? And it's really incredible because it's this unique opportunity to start to bring that type of data into the advertising ecosystem. But just a little bit more about them.
Yeah, please.
So essentially, if you know everything that's going on in the field, right, then you can use that data and you can normalize it and you can create a taxonomy around it. And, they're a really interesting, they're a really amazing company in that they started out where, they'd go and collect data and maybe you'd have somebody out in the field collecting that data. And now, they're advanced to using computer vision and optical tracking.
Amazing.
Right? Just imagine what that means.
Let me ask you this. What does that mean? So what are they doing with all that data?
Well, I mean,
the analysis?
It's absolutely incredible, right?
We're talking billions of data points?
Yeah, I mean, for just a player, there's 7,000 to 10,000 mesh points of everything that's happening, on the field, but also they even understand the density of a player, right? And it's just, they have unbelievable technology where, just imagine everything that you have to know, right? You have to know all the players, you have to know, identify them, and then running models on, what the actual play is, and so on and so forth. So it's just an incredible technology, right? They actually have, exclusive with their exclusive data distributor for the NFL.
Wow.
Official data distributor for the Premier League, basically incredibly advanced when it comes to knowing what's happening on the field.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Okay, so what does that mean in advertising?
What does that mean for us, the actual advertising community?
Okay, so...
but thank you for the background.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Just, so they have a product portfolio where when they work with leagues,
okay.
They also have what they call free-to-play product portfolio. And they work with providing games and quizzes and surveys, and they work directly with the leagues to find that, that engagement. So if you go to a particular league and you go, to games, if you will, they power that.
Okay.
Right? So think about what that means. You now you are, helping the league with that fan engagement, right? And that is the ultimate touch point with a fan, right?
Sure.
You start to have a conversation because, you can interact with them and ask questions. And so they're really advanced when it comes to building those types of games and surveys and so on and so forth. So if you think about, now they have data, play-by-play data,
yep.
And you also work with leagues to highly engage the fan with quizzes and surveys and
sure.
so on, and games and so on and so forth. You naturally, they have years and decades of experience really managing that data, right?
And so modeling that data.
Modeling that data, right? And so they power sports books globally.
Okay.
Right. So they know everything about the data to create markets. Right.
Sure. And as sports betting is essentially one of the fastest growing sectors in both EMEA and the US.
That's right.
It's a lot of data.
Okay.
That's a lot of interactions. Like,
oh yeah. So let's talk. So we talked about the data on the field.
Yep.
We talked about the fan engagement product portfolio, and then let's talk about what that means. So if you now have optical tracking and you can really understand the coordinate space of any digital stream, all of a sudden you can open up these unique opportunities, advertising opportunities, right? Because you are able to interpret this 3D coordinate space. And so the thing that is incredibly exciting is that as we continue to progress, we are always caught up in we think about linear, and we think about the transition from linear to digital.
Of course.
Then we think about vast.
Yep.
Right. So the way that we actually engage with advertising today is you're watching a video stream, and then there's an ad break.
Sure.
And then you watch the ad, right? And then you go back to the stream.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, well that's pretty disruptive, right? It's basically getting in between, you're excited and then, oh, here's an ad.
Yeah,
and
watching
then
an NFL game, you're truly watching about 15 minutes of actual play time, and you're spending 3.5 hours of just...
Well, it gets even worse in digital because, in linear, at least when you're getting the advertisements, you're like, okay, you're kind of just walking through them.
Sure.
In digital, there's a little spinner at the top that says, you got 2 minutes left. And you're like,
so
what? Right? Now I know how long I'm going to be here, right?
Sure.
So
where does Genius Sports fit into this?
Okay, so this is the incredible part, which is because you understand everything on the field and you can understand the coordinate space, you can now seamlessly integrate ads within the experience.
That's awesome.
Right? Incredibly awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you can take what's happening on the field and you can get creative where you can start to personalize that. Right? It's the next generation of because we always wonder about we have VAST and we have the way, we have, the way that we incorporate advertising today into streams.
Sure.
But as we're continuing to evolve in technology, it's there's actually a time and place that it's truly part of the ecosystem that you're enjoying.
So
right?
from a viewer's perspective, I'm a Chicago Bears fan. You were telling me that you live in Boulder. So if you're a Denver Broncos fan, help me understand if I'm watching a Bears game and if I'm cheering on my favorite athlete, how is this going to be personalized to me as a fan versus to someone that is in Pittsburgh, someone that's in Boston, someone that's in Los Angeles?
Yeah. So we know, look, we sit at the center of sports.
Yeah.
Right? And so we know everything about the fan. And that's actually one of our true core product pillars, is that if you think about identity, right? And sure, there's a lot of evolution, identity, there's privacy, there's everything else.
Yep.
But I look at all those things as positive because essentially what you're getting out of this is a stable identity. Right, if you think about the cookie, we've been around this for a long time. You think about if you think about the cookie, right, and you think about the publisher, and then you think about the SSP, and then the DSP. They all have a different version of the cookie because you have to actually cookie tie, and so it's only the with all this privacy and regulation coming in, and really starting to change the industry, it's actually a really nice point in our evolution because what you end up with is stable identity. And I'm started to talk about this, but the reason why that's important is because if you think about identity graphs, right? Most identity graphs, the center of that, in our case, is a fan.
Sure.
Right? The first ring around that is cross-device, right? Second ring around that is cross-platform. If you can connect the IDs, you can have cross-platform and find the audience. what I'm incredibly excited about
Please.
is that like the third ring of that is understanding the seasonality of where the sports fan is going to engage.
Okay.
Right. And because we know this entire ecosystem, we know, on the timeline of the year, like where you're highly going to be engaged. So if it's like football season, we're going to give you
gonna
football
hit me in September, October, November. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to know exactly the team you have an affinity to. We're going to know the players you like, right? We have the data to understand that.
Where does AI fit into this kind of data and into the modeling?
Yeah, just like it would, like psychographic behavioral, like it's just applied to sports, right? So like others are applied to like the device and the cross-platform, and then the attributes to that. So like our segmentation will be an intelligent profile, right? Like they've had AI machine learning forever, right? They've had to.
They've been around for 20 plus years. Yeah.
Like they've had to, so it's core to who they are. But you get someone like me that comes up and you see all of these ingredients. Like I still have, one more product pillar I'd love to tell you about, but like you start to see all of these things as someone like me that's been in advertising for 26 years. And I'm like, this is going to change the world, right? Like, like we're not generically going and finding audiences like a DSP would. Like we're an activation platform that really will have that conversation with you.
So tell me about that next pillar.
Okay, so here's the next pillar, which I think is incredible. So what I laid out here was, and I still have to tell you how we use the play-by-play data, but basically what I'm laying out is proprietary inventory and new formats that the world has never seen.
Can you get into any of those formats for us?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Actually, I showed some of it on the screen here today.
Amazing.
We now have the understanding of a fan, right? Because we've been in the industry for a long time, and identity graphs have been around forever, and they're really important.
Sure.
But with the stabilization of the ID in the identity graph, and then if you think about why we're even here, it's because linear is moving to new fronts, digital, right? And what does that mean for marketers? It's like, oh my goodness, I can actually use
the end of the beginning. Yeah, nothing will be the same.
I can use it. I can use addressability, right? Like I can actually measure
measurement, right? Personalization.
I can actually personalize. Right? That is the gold mine, right, for a marketer, right, to be able to do that. So the third pillar is that we have what we call an activation platform that has programmatic as a channel of many channels. And the third part of it is we have what we call a Genius Creative Suite. So now imagine.
Love some good creative.
No.
Yeah.
So now think about this. You've got AI coming in over the top, right? You have a creative suite that incorporates these native data play-by-play feeds. So like,
of course, for individual players.
So we work. Well, we have to, right? Because we create markets for the sports betting industry.
Yeah, of course.
So now imagine having, like I said, we were like exclusive with the NFL, and we are official for the Premier League. Like all these data feeds that we work with 400 leagues globally, they're all integrated into the creative suite, right? So now let's put it all together, which is, for the first time in the world, you have these feeds that that will dynamically update, creative, and optimize and do personalization down to like, we have AI that says, here's where you're going to have a lot of attention in the creative, and here's the moment within the creative, like that we believe like may have a call to action because people are engaged in it, right?
Right.
Oh, but on top of that, we're always constantly knowing what's happening in the live game that's happening right now. And we're always going to be updating the creative, so marketers can be up to real time. So when we think about, like, you hear in advertising all the time, like moments that matter.
Yeah.
But what does that really mean for traditional platforms? Like, what does it really mean? It's like, okay, well, I have a BAS request from a live game. Right. I mean, that's about it. Oh, and I can pace really well.
You have predictability.
Right. Yeah.
This is amazing.
So now think about you have. This is why we differentiate from a DSP, because we're saying, okay, well, we know access to programmatic channels can get to the live events. Great, we have that.
Right.
But we also can get to the live event itself. And so now I'm going to tie it all together for you. You have creative that's going to dynamically update based on everything that's going on, because we have to know everything that happens in the field.
Of course.
Right? And at the time that it happens, we're pushing these updates. We give marketers the ability to actually understand and know the fan and be able to target them, but have a conversation with them. And what I'm most excited about is that it's stable identities that have this ability to not, because people talk about frequency capping and everything else. Like, when you have a strong, stable identity and you reach a fan, you all of a sudden are in this moment where you're like, oh, I can also use it for the mechanics of knowing how many times I've talked to you. Oh, and by the way, I'm not going to shout at you like advertising tends to shout at you, right? Like
A lot of shouting.
Right, a lot of shouting.
Frequency issues, reach issues.
A lot of shouting, right?
Yeah.
So I like to talk about this in the form of conversation, right? Okay, so we have access. You can access all the channels that you are comfortable with, because the activation platform does that for you. And here's the really incredible part. So because we've basically tied all of that together, now imagine a world which is true.
Yep.
So, and this creative format, I'll actually share that with you. But now let's just imagine that, like in the case of Jude kicked the bicycle kick and brought England back to life. Incredible moment.
Yep.
Right. Well, we knew about that, right? We had to, right? We're feeding markets. So all of that data is fed into our platform as well. So now that moment happened. Let's just say that the new creative format was already in programmatic, because actually we worked with Brentford, and basically we would put a creative on top of the goal, right?
What's Brentford?
So soccer,
okay.
Right?
Thank you.
And we put a creative on top of the goal, and then we had replays within the stadium where they were showing when the goal happened, the creative came up, right? Okay, so now let's talk about moments that matter for just 1 second. I love talking about this.
This was my next question, was tell me
Okay.
Tell us about moments that matter.
Okay.
And tell us about just your vision is to be everywhere in sports, redefining experiences through technology.
Yeah.
And so that was the last thing I wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
And you're talking about it right now, so please.
Okay, here it is.
Yep.
This is now where we have evolved, right? I've told you about the evolution. We've talked about the stability,
three pillars.
the 3 pillars. Here's where it gets really exciting.
Yep.
So now if you incorporate the creative within the experience, like we talked about being able to put creative on top of the goal, because Genius is who it is and knows that some moment happened that mattered, like in the case of the bicycle kick, you can actually align a brand next to that moment. But it gets better than that. Because all that data is fed back to us, we take all the metadata, like who it was, where the stadium is, what time it was, the actual game, the players, the teams, and we actually create we can create a dynamic segment that then, how contextual works, that then crawls the web, looking for all of the metadata that we took out of the game in real time, and start aligning that same brand that happened on the goal in the case of the bicycle kick,
right?
And start aligning it to, as journalists are starting to write about it on the web, right? Because it's dynamic, moment that mattered, contextual segment. And all of a sudden that same brand gets to extend the moment that mattered into the extension of the moment, to continue to align the brand to that particular event that is monumental to a fan.
So from a soccer or a football perspective, not American football, but from a soccer perspective, a basketball perspective,
everything.
It's an assist is what's taking place.
Yeah.
You're assisting your media partners, and you're assisting your brands that are believing in your technology, helping them expand above and beyond.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's awesome, man.
Think about that. So I think about, this brilliant moment that we have, and there are pockets of it, right? Like, I remember when we were doing direct, and it was just simple ad serving, and then you start working with the industry and like, oh, well, we have this thing called RTB, and everybody's like, well, what's that, right?
Yep.
And that was a shift
Sure.
in advertising. We're here again. and it's with creative, it's with identity, it's with taking everything we've known in advertising, it's with creative and artificial intelligence and machine learning, and now you have LLMs. You tie that together, and you're talking about a platform that will change an industry.
Amazing. Manny, thank you very much.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Marketecture Podcast. New episodes come out every Friday, and an insightful vendor interview is published each Monday. You can subscribe to our library of hundreds of executive interviews at marketecture.tv. You can also sign up for free for our weekly newsletter with my original strategic insights on the week's news at news.marketecture.tv. And if you're feeling social, we operate a vibrant Slack community that you can apply to join at adtechgod.com.